Hello, I'm Rory McKiernan and welcome to the Love and Courage podcast. Love and Courage is independent community-supported media for social change. A huge thanks to all you great patrons and donors who've chipped in and supported the podcast so far. Together we've hit the #1 spot on iTunes, and more importantly, we're reaching and inspiring people all over the world and helping build a real community for change. You can find out more about the podcast, send me feedback, inquire about Love and Courage talks, workshops and events, sign up for newsletter updates and donate online over at loveandcourage.org. On Twitter it's @loveandcourage. If you're an iPhone and iTunes user, please help the podcast grow by taking just 30 seconds to click subscribe and leave a rating and a review. Again, sincere thanks for all your support. It really is appreciated and makes a big difference. I hope you enjoyed the podcast.
We have to start speaking these truths in order for us to figure out a way through it. We have to start naming things. We have to call it starvation. We have to call it genocide. We have to call these things by words that hurt so that we can feel that pain and then move through them. We don't ever really heal until we've named things. We have to name our trauma, and we have to work through it and love ourselves through it.
My guest in this episode is Chaz Jewett, or Red Morning Star Woman, a Native American woman from the Lakota tribe in central South Dakota. She has been active in the environmental movement since a young age, and during her youth she had to overcome abuse and huge suffering in her community. Chaz has been a leading light in the Standing Rock movement that inspired the world with its dignified native-led resistance to the Dakota Access Oil Pipeline. Chaz is a community organiser who is passionate about reclaiming and honouring indigenous rights and traditions and ensuring our community finally starts to be heard. I met up with her during her tour of Ireland that was organised by Donal O'Kelly, Afri and various human rights and environmental groups. Her visit took place on the eve of the Republic's historic ban on fracking. This was a fascinating conversation with a remarkable woman who I think you're going to enjoy hearing from. Chaz, thanks very much for joining me on the podcast. You've had a whirlwind tour of Ireland in the last few days. Can you tell me a little bit about how it's been going for you?
Oh, it's been wonderful. Everyone has been super informed and super welcoming, and I've just had a great time.
And how did your trip to Ireland come about? I mean, did you know much about Ireland before? Or who did you meet? Or how did it all happen? Because it's not every day that somebody from the Standing Rock movement ends up in Ireland.
Yeah, and I never in my life imagined coming to Ireland at all. But I was fortunate to meet Donal O'Kelly at a Irish history conference there in Rapid City, South Dakota. He came to me, and we both spoke on a panel about the Keystone Pipeline, and I was there speaking about the Keystone Pipeline, and we became fast friends and internet buddies and social media friends. And so, After Standing Rock happened, we had such a wonderful amount of support from the entire world. And Donal and the Love Leitrim people actually had a post or a sign that said, "From Eagle Rock to Standing Rock, we stand with you." And they shared that on social media. And
I actually remember seeing something that the Love Leitrim, so this is the fracking movement out of Leitrim, and I remember they did a big solidarity thing on a mountain up there. It's Eagle Rock, So it's great to see those global connections emerge, because they're very similar issues in so many ways.
Right, we're all water drinkers. We all have the fossil fuel industry trying to pollute our water as well all over the world. So for those that are listening to this and have heard maybe about Standing Rock but don't really know what it means, I think it did reach a level of public consciousness, but maybe not everyone knows what it was about or how it came about. Can you give us a lowdown? Sure. Well, the Dakota Access Pipeline was a company by the name of Energy Transfer Partners wanted to build the Dakota Access Pipeline, and the permitting process from the get-go was a little mixed up, and what they used through the Army Corps of Engineers, which we already as Lakota people, we already have a complicated relationship with the Army Corps of Engineers, because in the 50s they dammed up most of the Missouri River, and we lost all of our bottomland.
So anything the Corps of Engineers wants to do, we're a little suspect of, and we were suspect of this from the get-go because the permitting process that they used was a process that was normally for small projects like boat ramps and things like that. It wasn't something that was sufficient to monitor a project on this scope, several states, and all the distances that it was supposed to. In fact, they looked at the pipeline through individual states and not as a whole.
Oh, that's so similar to what happened in Rossport, County Mayo here in Ireland, where Shell have built a refinery. They broke it up into planning stages, and from the start there was a kind of a smoke and mirrors type situation,
and
a smoke screen rather.
And initially too, I'd heard when I first heard about the pipeline, they said it was going to be a natural gas pipeline because the Bakken, the Northwest North Dakota has been home to the Bakken oil boom, and they have a lot of they've been basically fracking oil up there, and so they have a lot of natural gas that's been leaking out of those oil wells, and so they flare them, they burn them up. If you look at Google Earth at night in the United States, you can see Denver, the metro area with all its lights, and then you can see Northwest North Dakota with all the flaring, all the flares that you could see it from space. They've been burning all that natural gas up there for so long. So a natural gas pipeline actually made sense, but somehow then it became a crude oil pipeline and something that was not really going to benefit anyone but a few bankers, really.
And what led you in particular to get involved in resisting this? What was your background? What were you doing when you first heard about it?
Well, I've been resisting things like this for a long time. I think some of my cousins would call me a professional protester. I'm still waiting for the profession part. I want to
waiting for the check.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that check that they all say that we're getting. But I've been active in environmental stuff since third grade, I think, is when I first I first learned about water. Actually, it's great. On the tribal school at the res, I learned from a white guy, young organizer, who came in to talk to us about water, and he told us about how much water we lost when we were brushing our teeth. Like 5 gallons go down the sink while you're doing it. I don't know how much liters that is, but so quite a bit.
Remind me, what age were you there?
I was third grade, so I was like 8 years old.
8 years old, and this white guy you referred to, was this a once-off talk?
It was. He was he was an organizer like me. I didn't know that at the time, but he came in, and once he came in and really sparked my fervor for saving water. I didn't know that that it was in such a dire position. That was 35 years ago now or something like that, and so I'm still I still worry about it in the same level, and it's still kind of an urgency for us. In western South Dakota, we live it's the high plain desert up there. We don't get a lot of rain, and unfortunately, a lot of our waterways have already been polluted by the uranium industry in northwest South Dakota. They left a lot of uranium mines unreclaimed, and so the mercury has leached into our water, and so a lot of our waterways are already polluted, and we can't drink out of them.
Well, I'm glad that guy came into your school, and it's actually inspired me in many ways hearing this story, because I go into a lot of schools myself, and I do various talks, and you're never going to reach everybody in a room at anything you do, but at times you do see people really, really tuning in and listening, and it's always been my philosophy that if you reach one person, it's worth it for me. And I never, particularly a young person, and to think that an 8-year-old all these years later can be involved in leading a resistance that made global headlines and inspired so many. Isn't
it great? Because it's we're being an indigenous person and being inspired by we have all these issues that involve us, and for me to be able to get that knowledge from a white guy and really hold on to it for my whole life, it's great for me. I never thought about that till a couple of years ago. Someone asked me, why'd you start organizing? And I was like, just because I was always aware that we have a finite amount of water, and we all need water to drink, and so without it, we're in a world of hurt. And I grew up on a ranch too. My family has been ranching in western South Dakota. My great grandfather came through in 1832. So, the Treaty of 1868 came up around us. The state of South Dakota came up around us. We've been ranching there along the Morrow River since that. We actually have one of the creeks is named Jewett Creek after my ancestor. So we live along Jewett Creek that empties into the Morrow River, which empties into the Missouri River. So we're, I guess we were river rats growing up, and so I've always been, defined by water down there.
And back to the white guy again.
Okay, all right.
Well,
yeah.
not quite, but
Yeah.
where I'm going with this is that obviously this young man, presumably he was a young guy at the time.
I wish I remembered his name.
Yeah, well, Mr. White Guy, if you're out there, you could be 70 years old now,
Yeah.
and you reached this person, and no doubt many others, and that's the gift that we bring to each other. Even now, people listening to this podcast
Right.
may be inspired by you. I'm sure they
Right.
will be, and they'll go on. And to me, we kind of pass on the flame or the torch to create hope for each other in those ways.
And as organizers, it's our job to create the words. We have to give the words to the movement. We have to continue to say things over and over and over again until someone hears it.
I'm glad you say that, because I
Yeah.
feel like I'm repeating myself
Yeah.
an awful lot
Yeah.
in a lot of what I say.
No.
But sometimes it's the same message. We just need to keep repeating it.
Right, and say it in different ways, so people can hear it in different ways. There's
Yeah.
a lot of people, will respond to technical stuff. A lot of people will respond to heart stuff, and people will respond to different things, and you just have to try out different messages. Like we were visiting earlier about the water protectors. We're water protectors. We're not protesting anything. We're just trying to protect our water. We're trying to protect our way of life. That's what we're. A lot of folks, indigenous folks, are rising because the earth is in crisis, and we know it. We haven't lost that connection. We still know. We still hear the cries of the earth, and it's getting louder and louder, and that more and more people are starting to hear it. So it's a wonderful thing that folks are starting to rise, and it's about time. I've been waiting for it for a long time, and I'm just really hopeful now that folks are starting to move in a better direction, I think.
The story of Indigenous people in the United States has in some ways been forgotten or erased or neglected in recent decades and perhaps over the last couple of centuries. Can you give people a sense of, I suppose, why that is, and some of the stories, some of the injustices really that have happened to your people?
Sure. We signed a treaty with the federal government in 1868. We signed two treaties, one in 1851, but the 1851 treaty was never ratified by the federal government or the Congress. But 1868 was, and since then we've been, on the land that we were supposed to be, but it's very complicated. There's we've been sort of erased from history. If you look at American history, it starts with the settlers coming on and doing all the stuff, and we were there, and we still are, despite the federal Indian policy and despite genocide. Really, I like to call it what it is, because the Washington football team in the United States has Washington, they call themselves the Redskins, and that's what the early settlers used to call us. That they would be paid $5 per red skin that they brought in. I mean, that's and we're still able to be. Last week, I think the Supreme Court said that that was a trademarked name, and that they could continue to use that name forever. And so basically, they just allowed that turning us into a mascot is dehumanizing us, and so now that's continued to be a part of the structure of America. And so the federal Indian policy that has done so much damage to our people is the tools of genocide, the ongoing tools of genocide, the assimilation, the boarding schools, the allotment, the relocation, even the termination of our Indian tribes. all the policies that have come in to sort of really, wipe us out. I'm sitting here in front of you, and I'm an educated woman, and I have. I own land on my reservation, but I can't sell that land, and I can't build anything on it without getting permission from the federal government. And, that's just not right. Here we are at 2017, and still we're being micromanaged like prisoners. And, that means that we are prisoners. And, it takes a lot to see that, but, things haven't changed. And, that's why, legally we own, we have, own the Missouri River to the eastern bank, and if we said no to that project, Dakota Access, that should be enough. It should be enough. Our saying no to a project, we should be able to say no to a project. And when we say no to something, they bring out the guns. That's the genocide is the state of affairs. It's the policy that the United States government has been living under for 500 years now, and it's still ongoing. A lot of folks don't know that our religion was illegal until 1978. A lot of folks don't know that what happened at the boarding schools and the rape and torture that 3 generations of our people had to overcome. I had to overcome a bunch of stuff to be able to sit here and to be able to be an organizer and to be able to do the things that I do. I was very privileged to have access to healing, and we're 7 of the poorest counties in the nation. The 7 poorest counties in the nation. We don't have access to health care. We don't have access to to monies to do economic development and all that stuff. It's a real dire situation on the reservations, but still, we're the poorest people in the nation, and yet we're the ones putting our lives on the line for water.
When you say you got access to healing, or you went on a healing journey in terms of overcoming some of the trauma perhaps that was in your background, what led you on that journey? Like, how did you embark upon that?
Well, I think that growing up on the reservation, there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of alcohol addiction. There's a lot of trauma that happens. And I grew up my mom and dad were together until my dad died in 2005. But and my mom's white. My mom was white. She's from California, but we lived on the res, and there was a lot of traumatic things, and my there's violence in our household, and I had unfortunately had some trauma that happened to me, and so in my 20s, I think that the way that we deal with trauma really is we take that into ourselves, and I turned it on myself, and I thought about suicide, thought about all these things, but something in me didn't let me, and I kept trying to seek out healing, and I did a lot of healing in my 20s, and in order for me to get out and to be professional and to do some things for my people, I had to work through that anger, really. And I think that anger is the thing that we trauma happens to us, and we get angry, and we either turn violent and turn it out to the world, or we turn it on ourselves, and we get depressed and suicidal and all those things. And we can never make any really great decisions when we're angry. So we have to move on, I think, to forgiveness, and think about things as we're human beings, and we're animals, and these things happen to us, and there's ways that we can heal ourselves, and there's a lot of knowledge out there about healing trauma. A lot of folks are doing it all over the world, and there's physical stuff that ceremonies and things like that we can do to overcome that stuff, and a lot of people are now since 1978 now we've had a resurgence in our ceremonies and our sun dances, and things are turning around, and we're going back to the ways that worked, and they worked for us for since time began, so hopefully they can work for us again, because we really need some things to work for us. Like I said, our suicide rate is 7 times the national average. We've got alcohol and drug abuse, 90% unemployment. It's a dire situation. and so we have to get out of it somehow, and we are.
It sounds so similar to the situation facing Irish travellers. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the situation here, but massive issues around incarceration, unemployment, prejudice, life expectancy, I think, is around late 40s and 50s. I think the same in your community. Late 40s, isn't it? Yeah, I suppose imprisonment would be a big one, but suicide levels as well. It struck me there what you said, 7 times higher, and it's the exact same with Irish travellers as well. And when you take somebody's culture away or deny them their culture, obviously it gets internalised and it can manifest itself in somebody maybe ending their lives. And Indigenous communities in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, it's a similar story. And often I think Irish people, we don't tend to think of ourselves as Indigenous in that way, probably because we share the same skin colour as so many of the colonisers. But a lot of the traumas we face are similar, and I think alcohol is part of that story, and unfortunately it's part of the story of Indigenous
some scientists have done some research about what they call a thrifty gene, that we've only been around alcohol for 150 years, right? So our bodies don't have the capability to process all that alcohol, and so they have they call it thrifty because they would hold on to carbohydrates for the year, so that when we didn't have food, you would be able to survive. And so that is working. It worked so well then, but it's working so far against us because now you can go get Cheetos on the street, and white flour is available, and sugar and all that stuff, so that our bodies are not physically evolved or not evolved. We don't have those enzymes and those things in us to process the alcohol. But it's the trauma as well. Childhood trauma is one of the reasons for addiction. I mean, they found that reason, and I think that there's that disconnect. That in South Dakota, we're in North Dakota as well. We're pretty much wiped off of the everyday. That we're not a common. Our people aren't in positions of power in the state, and there's no there's the only real representation that we have of our people are like in the jails and things like that. I mean, that's we have a lot of traumas, or a lot of challenges with that, and so if you don't see any examples of a healthy relationship and a healthy lifestyle in your world, then you don't know how to do that. And so there's really a lot of healing that we have to do, and a lot of things that we have to overcome.
Can you tell me a bit about your own family and where they came from? Maybe some of what they went through, your grandparents, your parents.
Right. My grandpa George was one of the first classes at Carlisle Indian School. He went to Carlisle, which is in Pennsylvania, and so when he was a kid, he jumped on the train and went all there in 1900s, and so he went to the boarding school out there. And my dad had 10 brothers and sisters, so they had a very large family, and a large Catholic family on the reservation. And so and my mom, like I said, is non-Indian. Her family's from California. My grandfather was at the Air Force Base in South Dakota, and they met, and the rest is history, I guess. And we still live there on the place that we've always been, and my sister's cattle ranch, and they have cattle, and my sister's kids are the seventh generation to be on that ranch and to live along the Jewett Creek. So I went to the College of St. Benedict. We have the Catholic Church is all around us. I went to college in Minnesota. That was as far back east as I think I could go. And I've been organizing in South Dakota since then.
So a lot of people wouldn't associate Indigenous cultures with Catholicism, perhaps. And can you tell me how that came into play in your history? Well,
that was a tool of assimilation of the federal Indian policy. They separated. They assigned churches to reservations, and we had both the Catholics and the Episcopalians on our reservation, and so we became Catholic, and there's Episcopalians. There's all kinds of different religions it was a tool that they used. In order for us to become more American, we needed to have, the church in our lives, and so a lot of us did. And we grew up on our knees doing the rosaries and all of that stuff. But as we got older, I found out that my dad hadn't gotten us baptized because he had a conflict with the priest, because I think I don't know why, but we were baptized, and so that was like there was that weird we're really Catholic but yet not baptized. What's that mean? And we ended up getting baptized so that we could get confirmed and all of that stuff. But by that time, my dad had pretty much not. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if he left the church really, but he sundanced. He participated in some of our ceremonies toward the end of his life, and so he came full circle. And went was a deacon. It was studying to be a deacon in the Catholic Church, and then at the end ended up sundancing. So I think that spirituality. We're very spiritual people. We pray all the time, and and we're always in prayer. That was the great thing about Standing Rock. We were always in prayer, and up there, and able to really seek guidance when we needed it, and that's that's never gone away. We're always very prayerful people. The most important thing about being a Lakota, I've always thought, I was taught, was that we have to be good relatives, and we believe that Midakuye Uyasin, we're related to everything in the universe, and so it's a big responsibility to be a Lakota, because you have to be a good relative to everything.
I suppose that's a kind of a nature-based spirituality that maybe isn't so prevalent in Catholicism. And do you think that was like a big part in the erosion of your culture, is to strip away that connection to the land? Or, I mean, how did that all play out? Because it something definitely seemed to happen at Standing Rock, where I felt that there was people all over the world, really. They weren't just like inspired by the resistance to the pipeline. They were inspired by how you were doing it, and you were calling yourselves protectors, not protesters. You were protecting the earth. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that we've come so far in civilization. I'll call it. I'm doing air quotes here. We've come so far that we have all this technology and all this stuff, and we really we have this this consumer culture that's soulless. There's a lot of buying stuff, but there's not a lot of satisfaction. We're depressed, we're anxious, we're taking pills for this and that. There's consumer culture leaves a lot to be desired, because there's always something that you have to get in order for you to be for you to be whole, and that's not that's the opposite of rape cultures, consumer culture. I like to call it rape culture, because it is. You don't give consent, but the opposite of that is consent culture. And when we give consent to things, and we ask consent for things, we're giving respect to whoever we're asking consent from, or whatever we're asking consent from, and that in itself it's not the way we do things now. We don't ask consent. We just we jam our flag down there, and we claim it in the name of whoever. But if we have to move around to another way, and stop imposing our will onto things, and start asking what do you want? What can we do? How is this? I think we have to. I don't know. I feel like we all have the ability to as human beings, we're sovereign, and we're sovereign, people, and we can make decisions about our own selves. And as a nation, as a tribal nation, we should be able to make our own decisions as well, and we should be able to live our ways and have our ways, and to practice our religion the way everyone else in America gets to do it. And our religion requires water. Water's a part of our ceremonies. Water's a part of our all of that stuff. We deserve to have clean water to do our ceremonies. And I guess that's a long convoluted answer, which doesn't even really answer your question. But that's a part of. Water is life. Mini Wachoni. That's what developed at Standing Rock. That word. I don't know who said that. I don't know where it came from, but it's fantastic. And it's true for everyone in the world. Water's life. Water's life for everyone, not just indigenous people. And we need to remind everyone that that's the case. We're gonna, because we need to now.
Well, couldn't we also do with the likes of Trump and all these guys, if they say they're Christian, isn't water life? Water is life in Christianity as well. That if they could sort of practice what they preached, we could go a long way.
Oh, sure. Well, that's it goes without saying that a lot of Christians don't act very Christ-like, and I've got there's a lot of inconsistencies in the way leaders in America talk and what they do. There's not a lot of focus on humanity in America right now, and hasn't been for a while. I think Eisenhower told us that we were in trouble with the military-industrial complex. We should have listened to him, because since then we've been battling it out everywhere, creating terrorists everywhere we go. And I think President Obama dropped a drone every hour in 2016. That was President Obama. He was supposed to be the change maker. He was supposed to bring about something different. And yet, he sold fracking to the world, and he, is bombed the heck out of, a bunch of poor people in places that, we didn't have any business being in.
And when it came time to the, I suppose, the alternatives to Obama, there was Hillary, there was Bernie, and there's Trump, and probably not much else in the Republican side. But talk to me a bit about Hillary, because, and particularly in the gender context, a lot of people were for Hillary because it could have been the first female president, like there was the first black president. And I assume that, well, I believe that does matter at a level, but it's maybe not the full story.
Well, I think I kind of learned my lesson about Obama. I did, we were hoping that, we were voting for the black president, and we got the white president. He's half and half too. So, but, Hillary was, her policies aren't, just because she's a woman doesn't make her a feminist, and her policies were not very woman-centered. And, I was a Bernie supporter because he had 30 years of policy experience behind him. You could look back and see where he put his energy, and it was in good places. And you could look back and see where Hillary put her energy too. And, a lot of people did. And, I didn't vote last year for the first time in my adult life. And after Bernie lost, I was a big Bernie supporter. But because there's no difference in the policies that I cared about between Hillary and Trump, the fracking that they sold to the world was that was just way too much. I actually was the first person on Twitter to hashtag no fracking. I was very excited to tell the lovely Trump people that. So I've been, long time opposer of that, and the Obama administration really did push that on a lot of the developing country, and it was heartbreaking that we're in the midst of a global catastrophe, and the Democrats and the Republicans in America are ignoring it and choosing to do the same old industry emphasis, and which is those industries are all subsidized. We're subsidizing the killing of our planet, and there's got to be a point when we start to recognize that. And it's not about jobs anymore. It's about life. It's about water. What's more important? Jobs aren't important when you can't drink water. I've heard a lot about the story of the starvation, and that they, put people to work just building roads that didn't matter, so that they could feel like they, were worthy and things like that. I don't know why they did that, but that seems absolutely ridiculous to me, because we're human beings and we need food and water, and jobs are nothing. Jobs don't matter. Jobs are I don't want to. My dad was very instrumental in teaching me that I never had to do anything I didn't want to do, and so he gave me the courage to always take jobs that mattered. And I've never taken a job that I had to compromise my value system, and I'm very fortunate in that. But a lot of people have to take jobs that have to feed their families. But our economies are going in the wrong directions. We're subsidizing the wrong things. We need to start looking at we have the technology now that for us to live far better lives than we are, and yet we're not, because there's this one goal out there that is greed, and we're living in that mentality where we need more and more and more, and it just makes us feel less and less and less, and we need to switch that around and just be okay with who we are and do the things that matter. We need to drink water, we need to eat food, and we need to have community, and that's the big thing. We need to build communities that matter and build relationships that matter. And right now we've got this soul sickness, and it's not making anyone happy around the whole world. And so we're not trying to be happy, but we just we need to get out of this desperation that's all over the world. There's just this this desperation that this oppressive violent a world that we live in is not making it. It's not worth us, it's not worthy of us to be living in this world. We have such capacity for kindness and for generosity, and yet we have people who are starving, and then we have people who are living in such excessive ways. It breaks my heart. Has for a long time.
And I just want to go back momentarily to the decision to not vote, because there may be people listening here that will be triggered by that, and I'm sure you've had these conversations. So there may be one view that will say, well, if you didn't vote, you created Trump.
That's right. Well, in South Dakota, it didn't matter. South Dakota's Trump country. He was going to win anyway. It was 70% of the folks in South Dakota voted for Trump, and that was going to be the way it was. So my vote didn't really matter in South Dakota. But also. I've been doing the native vote for the last 4 cycles. Not doing it was a big deal for me, and I thought about it very for a long time, and it hurt me to not be able to be a part of that. I even have a hashtag Citizen Chaz, because I love I believe in the system that we have there. I just think it's so broken now, and obviously the things that matter to me, water and peace, were not two things that either Trump or Clinton were really going to care about. And so what's the point? What's the lesser of two evils? I mean, that's what the Democrats are in America, is the lesser of two evils. They're both doing the same thing. The Democrats are trying to pretend like they're the better choice, but they're not. They've shown themselves to do that. I'm really hopeful in continuing to be a part of the efforts that Bernie Sanders is doing, because I think that locally in South Dakota, we just started our own political action committee called Dakotas for America. We want to put our people in positions of power in South Dakota, and we want to get our people out to vote. We want our people to feel empowered and to encourage to vote. It's everyone should be able to see their people in deciding positions. We should be able to be a part of the decision making that affects us. And thus far, we haven't been able to. Some parts of South Dakota just in 1980 just got a vote for their county commissioners. Our votes are gerrymandered and thrown into legislative districts that don't give us a lot of power. But Standing Rock happened, and we have the opportunity to reach out to folks who we haven't who haven't heard about us and our struggles. So now, instead of just relying on the Democrats in South Dakota, who are our only friends, we don't even mess with the Republicans in South Dakota because they hate us. So the Democrats are our friends, but they don't pay any attention to us, and they're not working on our policies. They're just recently, one of their candidates came out and that wanted to run for governor, didn't even mention us in his announcement. I mean, we're the largest voting bloc in the primary. And what an arrogant guy to think that he doesn't even have to mention us or our issues in that thing. He also took money from Energy Transfer, the guy who's the Democrat who's running for governor in South Dakota. So we have no real friends in those parties. So we're starting this political action committee to try to encourage to train candidates and to want a lot of times folks have to worry about tribal politics. We have to worry about electing our own council people and all that stuff, and they don't even want to have to worry about the state. It's like all these levels of government, which they have we're don't feel empowered or involved in any of them, their tribal politics and their state politics. And so post Standing Rock, though, 99% of us got involved and supported what happened up in Standing Rock, and so we feel like there's a new opportunity for us to really, get our people into those positions and try to, become a part of the governing in South Dakota and try to, get our issues out there and try to make an impact and bring some hope around.
And what about you? What do you think's next for you after? Obviously, you're going to be doing more organising, but do you ever see political office? Do you have a sense of your own future, or is it for me, in some ways, it's a magical mystery tour, and it'll probably continue to be. But I'm just curious, do you have a sense of the future?
Well, I've thought about it. It's funny because I've worked for the last 15 years begging people to run for office, and so now I'm in a position where I think I'm probably going to run for city council. We just had the election, so we've got another 2 years. And in my ward, I've been doing a lot of work locally on police brutality in Rapid City, where I live. Rapid City is a large border town in the it's in South Dakota, and we've been working on trying to build community between Indian people and white people. We've been living in South Dakota next to each other for all this time, and we don't know each other. We've got different ways of communicating. We've got different ideals and a lot of distrust between the two. And so we've been trying to, for the last 2 years, really build that community. So we've been having these community conversations once a month, and we've had half Indian people and half white people at them, and it's an astounding thing. And I just am so am so overwhelmed all the time that it's going so well. But we start every meeting in prayer, and we give it over to Creator to really guide us and to help us figure these things out. There's no words really to have these conversations. Once you start talking about white supremacy or racism, all that stuff, people start to feel all kinds of ways, and so we have to really approach these things in in a calm and compassionate way. And so, there's a lot of different levels of understandings about federal Indian policy and about, all these, different, these things that happen to us. And so we have to, bring everyone along, bring our allies along, and encourage and empower them to feel comfortable. And no, this is it's something I'm really trying to figure out. That it's sort of, I resent it a bit, but I know that this is it's important for me to also encourage and empower my allies, and so that they can be successful too. Because we've gotten to a place where we don't trust white folks. We don't, and that's just the way it is, and a lot of white people are like, well, why don't your people trust us? And I'm like, well, why should we really? I mean, give me some examples why we should. But that cognitive dissonance of America, people don't quite personalize those federal Indian policies. They don't, they don't think that they were a part of them. These were things that happened to your people. So, they also have to be educated about these. Genocide, folks don't say, oh, we're doing genocide. This is, they say, oh, we're going to help the Indians reorganize themselves. We're going to help they couch these policies in ways that seem helpful. Like the Bush administration had the Clear Skies initiative, but that was really all about polluting the heck out of everything. And, it's the greenwashing of things. And it's the really, saying, the words that we say aren't ever the truth. We have to start speaking these truths in order for us to figure out a way through it. We have to start naming things. We have to call it starvation. We have to call it genocide. We have to call these things by words that hurt, so that we can feel that pain and then move through them. We don't ever really heal until we've named things. We have to name our trauma, and we have to, work through it and love ourselves through it. America's a wonderful place. I'm really liking Ireland. I might, I'm gonna come back as a tourist, I think, so I can do some of the things that I didn't get to do in my quick trip here, because it feels, so. Your people have such good hearts and just so loving to me, and I've just felt so warm. The taxi driver who drove me here today, after he found out I was from Standing Rock, just gave me a free ride. I was just so amazed and so touched, and but we have the potential in America to bring about that country that they say that they are, and we're gonna continue to fight until it happens, I think.
Chaz, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And
thank you.
I look forward to your election campaign.
Aha, thank you.
Best of luck. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Love and Courage podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd really love if you could subscribe to the podcast, rate it and review it, and spread the word on social media and wherever you can. While I love doing these interviews, they take a lot of time and effort in research, production, post-production and publicity, and there are some costs involved. If you would like to chip in and help the podcast grow, it would be really appreciated. All contributions welcome, and monthly patrons can receive a Love and Courage t-shirt, badge, special mentions online, and discounts on future workshops and events. And this support helps me to help others in the community in my day-to-day work. My sincere thanks to all of you who have already supported in so many different ways. Also, just to say, I sometimes take on social change media, communications campaigns and strategic projects, and do talks and presentations, workshops in schools and colleges, community centres and at conferences. Topics range from mental health and personal development to youth and community empowerment, leadership, activism and social innovation. If you're interested in learning more about any of this, please let me know. So to get in touch, to offer feedback or suggestions, or to make a financial contribution right now, log on to loveandcourage.org or send me an email to podcast@loveandcourage.org. Thank you so much for all your support. Until next time, here's to you, to all of us, and to having the courage to create big change in our lives and in the world around us.